relations between the United States and Cuba. If you could give your overall impression, you've also had a distinguished career yourself as a UN official. If you could speak to maybe a little bit on just what it takes to be engaged, to be proactive in dialogue, and to advance cooperation to solve issues using the United States and Cuba as an example.
Well, I think a key element is to, as you say, to engage directly not just among governments and between governments, but certainly with civil society at large, the private sector, and other players. The UN system also has been very active on the field. In terms of how the two countries have progressed, certainly the two specific countries, the United States and Cuba, there's been an important dialogue going on to try to move forward this relationship for quite some time, and the two presidents, as I indicated this afternoon, have indeed come forward, and therefore the two governments are fully committed and engaged. The engagement of the people is very important on both sides of the operation, and certainly bringing in more people to witness for themselves the opportunities, the possibilities, and the options that there are that represent a win-win for everyone, for the Cuban people, for the United States population, as well as many other people. This is also very much an issue of reconciliation between Cuba and the United States, between Cuba and Cuba Americans, which is also very much a critical element of this equation, if you will. And there is progress on that front. In terms of the relationship itself, progress, as I mentioned, is being handled constructively. There are still some concerns within the United States, some concerns within Cuba. Not everyone is completely on board or completely comfortable with this, but we are, and in particular the Obama administration, and one trusts that whoever will be elected next will continue this progress, which will take its time. Some actions have been made already, some actions will require time, and some issues will require significant time. Change is not comfortable for everybody. It's both enthusiastic as well as a delicate series of steps, and there better be few good, clear steps as we move forward rather than rushed steps. And the private sector and organizations, certainly like CIFA, can make a big difference, bringing expertise to these different actors that are on the ground, bringing training, and also exchange of views, inviting some of these small and medium-sized entrepreneurs to come and speak to the forum itself, which I think could also demonstrate prima facie what is going on, what some of their constraints are, which are not necessarily all affiliated with politics or with economics. But the creative juices are there for many. Remittances coming from the United States have certainly helped kickstart some of the businesses, but the commitment of the people and their perseverance, at least for some of the people, has been making a big difference. Nearly 25% of the population is now engaged in the entrepreneurial sector, and this therefore represents a big force, a big energetic and economic force that the U.S. Is aware of, and that the Cuban authorities are also now cooperating with and understanding the impact this has also on neighborhoods and on empowering people who need to understand that this is okay. It's healthy to move forward and to do so in a creative and constructive way.
And your, shall we say, long career with the United Nations, shall we call it, an intimate understanding of how diplomacy works and what it will take to get things accomplished, get things done. I think today in the forum we heard a lot about the new paradigm that we're going to be soon dealing with, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. And in just a brief, maybe thought, your hope for how the actors, both political, business, and otherwise involved, will be able to kind of pull out the best practices so that they are able to achieve what they hope to with these new goals.
Well, governments have finally demonstrated their commitment to these ambitious Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of them, with a plethora of actions and indicators. It will be a challenge to make this happen. These are measurable, these are time-bound, so there will be associations with governments being made if things are not done. If things don't come to the table, if changes don't happen, they'll have to give explanations and be accountable for what they can or cannot do. I think an example like what's happening in Cuba, which is a very unique set of circumstances, politically, socially, economically, and environmentally, it gives an illustration of what can be done at the diplomatic front, indeed in a very quiet, discreet way perhaps, but also in a broader sense to help advance and make progress on the benefits of the people. It'll be interesting for certain organizations and for certain member states, whether it's the Cubans and the United States will want to do so, that's up to those authorities, to see if coincidentally, because I don't think that the reestablishment of relations between U.S. and Cuba was timed on purpose to coincide with the adoption of the Sustainable Development Agenda by 2030. But it does give an opportunity to use that as an illustration of what can be done, to what extent it can be done, because not all governments will be able to come forward with implementing certain actions in the same way, with the same level of enthusiasm, with perhaps the same level of transparency and candor. And so using other examples will help other governments come forward with their own examples of how to advance the SDGs, all 17 of them, or at least a good chunk of them.